Serafina, my husband's white moonlight, was burned by the barbecue, and falsely claimed that her vocal cords were damaged, crying that her singing career was over. In a fit of rage, he tied me, who was about to give birth, directly to a tree and piled firewood underneath, then lit it. Alara, you knew that Serafina's most important thing was her vocal cords, and you still deliberately brought the scorching barbecue to her. I see that you did it on purpose. I looked at the increasingly fierce flames under my feet, and endured the severe pain in my abdomen, begging him to spare me and the child. Declan, the child will die like this. This is also your child. How can you be so cruel? The coldness in Declan's eyes was even more intense, but he didn't make any move to let me down. When you wanted to hurt Serafina, you should have thought about the consequences. I will make you bear 1,000 times, 10,000 times the price. You're so far along in your pregnancy. How could anything happen to the child? You're trying to threaten me with the child again. It seems you're still unrepentant. After speaking, he ordered people to tightly wrap me with thorny vines from the mountains, the thorns piercing into my flesh, the force squeezing my abdomen out of shape. No matter how much I begged, his resolute back never turned back. The fire grew bigger and bigger, tearing at my skin, and I endured the pain, gritting my teeth to hold on, but I only saw the amniotic fluid rupture under the high temperature, and I could only watch the formed child slide into the sea of fire and disappear. The next day at dawn, Declan was carefully taking care of Serafina in the hospital. He threatened to make me kneel down and kowtow 100 times to his white moonlight to let me go. But he didn't know that my child and I had long turned to ashes. Mr. Declan, the madam has been tied to the tree all night. The madam is weak, and she's carrying your child. I'm afraid. A flicker of emotion flashed in Declan's eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. I only ordered Alara to be tied up for half an hour to learn a lesson. I didn't expect her to learn to lie about her life just to be jealous of Serafina. Since she hasn't realized her mistake yet, then keep her up there. The person in charge's voice trembled, and he wanted to say something, but it took a long time to hear him clearly. But we found that the fire was too big last night. Even the tree the madam was tied to was burned to ashes. We rushed there this morning, and didn't find any trace of anyone. The other party continued to speak, but was interrupted by Declan. The fire I made last night was a low-temperature fake fire. The fire would slowly extinguish when it reached the specified temperature, and it wouldn't hurt anyone at all. At least make up a believable lie. And I installed a body detector on Alara. If there are any abnormalities in her body data, the system will notify me immediately. Now that she's burned down the tree, she's probably hiding somewhere waiting for me to find her. Mr. Declan, you ordered that the madam not be let down without your permission. The vines were tied tightly last night. I'm afraid a woman couldn't break free. Declan rubbed his sore temples, and for some reason he had been feeling bursts of pain since just now. Behind him, Serafina came forward and wrapped her arms around Declan's neck, pulling him back to reality. Cough cough. Declan G, I'm much better, don't worry. You've been at the hospital all night. Alara won't overthink it, right? Why don't you go back? She's a pregnant woman now. She's more sensitive and needs your company. It would be bad if I caused misunderstandings between you. Declan looked up at Serafina, whose eyes were slightly red, and felt even more sorry for her. You're too kind. You suffer grievances alone. If I hadn't found out, how long would you have been bullied? Don't worry, this time I will teach Alara a lesson and make her apologize. With me protecting you, no one will dare to bully you again. Hearing this, Serafina leaned over and kissed the other party's forehead, like a couple in love. If your mother hadn't personally saved my life back then, I'm afraid I would never have seen you again. It seems that Alara is still the same as before, full of bad ideas. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have missed you for so many years. Now it seems that heaven still doesn't want us to be separated. As he said that, Declan pressed Serafina down and gently kissed her with reluctance. It turned out that in Declan's heart, I had always been a heinous and vicious woman. A tear fell on my hand, and I realized that I was already in tears for some reason. But now that I have become a ghost, no one will ever bully your Serafina again, Declan. Declan gently placed his lips on the other party's neck, kissing her with tenderness, and his eyes were full of heartache. I hadn't seen him so emotional for a long time, But now I watched him leave all this to another woman. Now that I think about it, I wasn't even worth a word from Serafina. Who would have thought that her soft throat would be the reason for killing me and the child in my belly? When I learned that Declan had sent someone to arrest me, I had just laid down on the bed, but he mercilessly dragged me up and took me to a deep forest. It was then I realized that I was alone and helpless. Looking at the flames rising behind me, and thinking of the unborn child, I knelt on the ground and repeatedly begged Declan for mercy. I didn't even notice the blood seeping from my forehead. I only saw him grab me and his eyes mixed with anger. Alara, what are you pretending to be pitiful for? When you bullied Serafina, why didn't you think about how much pain she was in? Do you think that just because you're pregnant, everyone has to listen to you? Do you think I'll spoil you endlessly just because you're carrying my child? It's too late, you shouldn't have touched Serafina. Seeing that I showed no signs of giving up struggling, Declan directly sent several strong bodyguards to tie me to the tree with the thorny vines that had been prepared. As I struggled violently, some thorns pierced deeply into the flesh, and strands of blood dripped onto the fire and evaporated instantly. I felt the moisture on my body decreasing little by little, and the fire spread to the hem of my pants, scorching my flesh, but it was blocked by the wood. I let out a tearing cry for help, and Declan's footsteps moved forward a few steps uncontrollably, but were stopped by Serafina. She covered her mouth and squatted on the ground, looking like she couldn't breathe properly. Declan G, there's so much smoke here, and my throat is injured again. My throat hurts so much right now. Declan immediately stopped, and turned around to hug Serafina in his arms. I'm so afraid that I won't be able to speak or sing again in the future. I don't want to become mute. His eyes were only on Serafina, he couldn't see me at all, and he left me without hesitation. The fire grew bigger and bigger, but I was completely controlled. The flames made my flesh tighten, and then slowly went up. Large amounts of smoke went into my lungs, making me unable to call for help, and I could only rely on my remaining strength to save myself. Perhaps the child in my belly felt uncomfortable, and wanted to come out quickly. The amniotic fluid ruptured and a warm current flowed out, but I knew that giving birth to the child now would be fatal. My hands and feet were trapped, and I couldn't control the speed at which the child fell at all. I didn't even notice that a layer of skin had been rubbed off my wrist. I then realized that the inside of the tied vines revealed the wires inside after being burned, firmly fixing me in place. The flames baked the skin, causing it to lose its elasticity and become layers of useless skin. Soon, the skin couldn't hold the child, and I could only watch the child fall into the fire pit. Having lost my last hope, I no longer had any reason to persevere. My child turned to ashes before I could even hold him. I struggled non-stop, but found that I had broken free from the vines. That's right, I had become a soul. I was already dead. But while I was experiencing extreme pain, Declan was carefully caring for his white moonlight. He even went to the trouble of bringing in top doctors from all over the world to personally prepare medicine to treat her throat, and booked all the tonics in the city to heal his sweetheart. But everyone could see that the woman he was heartbroken for wasn't injured at all. Only Declan was blinded and regarded Serafina as a treasure. He even accompanied her to the Arctic to see the aurora despite being severely allergic to cold air, just to make his white moonlight happy. The promise he once made to me was ultimately given to someone else. Declan's subordinates couldn't bear to watch any longer, and wanted to remind him to let me down several times, but he sternly interrupted them. Fake fire isn't real fire. It won't kill Alara if she stays there a little longer. If you bother me again, I'll throw you into real fire to shut your mouth. At this time, Declan opened the app on his phone that had been bound to the data for detecting Alara, and found that everything was normal, and the frown on his face smoothed out. He sent someone to order that I be tied for another 2 hours, and then let down. Serafina, who was lying in Declan's arms, made an uncomfortable sound. Declan G, I know Alara isn't easy either, so don't punish her so severely. It's nothing for me to be injured. She has your child in her belly. I don't want to be a bad person who bullies others. Declan stopped Serafina from finishing her words with his lips, and his love grew stronger. You are my living bodhisattva. If you hadn't gone to the temple to pray for me for a month and obtained this amulet, sincerely copying Buddhist scriptures, and your mother's superb skills, how could I have been reborn? As Declan spoke, He groped for the amulet beside his belt, while Serafina lowered her head and nodded in agreement with an unnatural expression. It turned out that Declan's favoritism was all a sincere compensation to his savior, and Serafina received it without any fear. Declan, when you know the truth, will you still be so calm? If it weren't for Serafina's arrival, I probably wouldn't have died at the age of 28. 2 days ago, Serafina returned to the country, and it happened to be her birthday. So Declan asked me to help her celebrate. I wanted to refuse, but Declan interrupted me impatiently, saying, "Since you got pregnant, isn't everything I do catering to you? Today is Serafina's birthday. As her sister-in-law, just take care of her. It won't cost you a piece of meat. Besides, you've been eating and sleeping at home all the time. It's time to move around. You're as fat as a pig." After speaking, he forced me to put on a tight dress that was supposedly prepared for me by Serafina, and forcibly dragged me to the birthday party. I realized that the reason I was there was to highlight Serafina's beauty and to help her make food. Just because Declan thought the food outside was unhealthy. Serafina thought the weather was too hot and wanted to eat barbecue, so I was pushed by Declan to the yard to help her make barbecue. "Didn't you make money by grilling before when we started the business? Now you can use your skills to make it for Serafina to try and bring your relationship closer." After Declan finished speaking, he answered the phone and left. Serafina walked up to me wearing the same red dress as me, making my figure even more bloated. She had a smug look on her face, with a sarcastic arc on the corner of her mouth. "Look at how ugly and fat you are now. What man would look at you? Declan G has already told me. He feels disgusted when he sees you now. You're not shameless enough to cling to Declan G and not get a divorce, are you? Do you think you can win against me with the child? No way. As long as the child in your belly isn't born. Whether I let him live or die is just a matter of words." Looking at the arrogant Serafina in front of me, I was afraid that she would do something dangerous to the child, so I took a step back for safety. I knew that Declan no longer had much love for me, and I didn't expect to fight for anything. I just wanted to give birth to the child safely and leave this place. Perhaps because I hadn't spoken, Serafina took it as a provocation and pushed me directly towards the barbecue grill. Before I could react, the red-hot coals made close contact with my skin, causing me to scream in pain. I struggled to get up, but Serafina knocked over the half-standing grill, slamming it onto my lower back, instantly pressing my stomach, which had just been separated from the coals, back down again. I only heard the sound of bones breaking, and a warm liquid flowed out of my body, emitting a strong bloody smell under the high temperature evaporation. I was now in the backyard, and it was empty with only the two of us. I tried to cry out for help. She stood high above me, forcefully grinding my mouth with her shoe. "Cherish your chance to speak. When Declan Gidge comes back, do you think he'll save you? In my eyes, it's either you or me. Today, one of us dies. I only trust dead people to be honest and not talk nonsense." Soon Serafina squatted down, covering her mouth and coughing violently, even injuring the skin around her mouth with a hot bamboo skewer, leaving traces of blood. At this moment, I saw Declan driving back outside the gate, and I used my last strength to cry for help. I saw a figure running towards here in the darkness, getting closer and closer. Declan immediately pulled Serafina into his arms, frantically dialing for an ambulance. He immediately gave the woman in his arms medicine, as if afraid she would disappear. He pointed at me angrily and roared, "Knowing that Serafina has asthma, you still let her near the smoke. You're clearly trying to kill her, aren't you?" Hiding in Declan's arms, Serafina coughed and said in a hoarse voice, trembling, "I don't know what I did to offend her. She even threatened to use skewers to pierce my throat, so I can't make any sound again." The expression on Declan's face became increasingly angry, but he anxiously carried Serafina towards the ambulance waiting outside. I endured the pain of the burned skin being scraped off and crawled over little by little. "It hurts. Declan, can you save me first?" But he disgustedly shook off my hand from his pant leg. "At a time like this, you're still joking with Serafina's life? Besides, the charcoal I chose is high-quality, low-temperature charcoal, which doesn't cause any harm to the human body at all. What are you pretending for now?" In the darkness, I couldn't see Declan's expression clearly, only feel his footsteps as he left. But just as Serafina was getting into the ambulance, I saw the last smug smile on her face illuminated by the lights. Her mouth seemed to be telling me, "You can't win against me." I desperately tried to save myself, enduring the pain of the flesh separating, little by little, and called 120 for help. Fortunately, my timely self-rescue saved the child's life. I thought it was over, but I didn't know that a real nightmare was quietly coming. "Mr. Declan, we've been searching all day and haven't found any trace of Madam. Not even a body." Declan threw the teacup in his hand against the wall, shattering it. After a long while, he curled up the corners of his mouth in a relieved manner. "She's addicted to playing dead, isn't she? How many more tricks does she have to play?" "Fine, then let her pretend as much as she wants. When the time comes, I will find her alive or dead." Hearing the noise outside, Serafina came out of the bedroom in a robe. "Since she's sent people to find you again and again, she must want to see you. Don't worry about me, it's nothing for me to be a little hurt." Serafina, acting like the mistress of the house, instructed the servants to brew a pot of health tea for Declan to relieve his stress. Seeing the charming appearance of the woman in front of him, Declan felt even more affection and pulled her onto his lap. "You always think about others and don't care about your own feelings. Do you know that it will make my heart ache even more? If I let her off so easily this time, she will hurt you again next time. I can't bear it. This time, when she comes back, I will give her a good spanking. No need anymore. I'm already dead. Declan, no one will bully her anymore. I have been punished, and even paid with my life." Looking at the woman in front of him, her eyebrows and eyes reminded him of Alara's once speaking eyes. Come to think of it, it had been a long time since he had really looked at her eyes. Serafina was staring at him affectionately and wanted to kiss him, but Declan turned his head to the side, feeling a sense of melancholy in his heart. Finally, he ordered the driver to prepare the car and coaxed Serafina with a smile. "I'll personally see what tricks Alara has. When I find her, I'll make her kneel down and apologize to you." Declan followed the team into the mountains. For some reason, his heart became increasingly uneasy. It wasn't until Serafina called him several times that he came back to his senses. In a clearing where the grass had been burned to ashes, only a bare tree remained that had not been completely burned. Black charcoal hung on the tree, and a piece of black cloth, blown in from somewhere, hung on it, covering my face and making it impossible to distinguish the appearance from a distance. But Declan dared not take a step forward. The employees in charge of controlling the scene all stopped and waited for Declan's instructions. Without his order, no one dared to dispose of this unidentified object at will. He probably hadn't realized that his hand was trembling slightly and unnaturally. Then, he regained his composure and called the chief person in charge. "Alara has sent people here again and again, just wanting to see me, right? What is she playing now with playing hard to get? Tell me, where is she hiding?" Serafina came to see her while ill. "Tell her to come out and apologize to Serafina. Otherwise, this matter is not over." I looked at the charred remains of my body, and my heart had long been dead. "Declan, I'm right in front of you. You killed me with your own hands. Why can't you recognize me? Even after I'm dead, aren't you going to let me go?" The chief person in charge next to him didn't dare to breathe loudly and said tremblingly, That's Madam. If you don't believe me, you can check it yourself. None of us would dare to lie to you." Seeing that the person in front of him was still concealing Alara's whereabouts, Declan's anger rose, his anger greater than fear, and he strode forward. His foot stepped on the child's body, and the fragile skeleton was instantly crushed. I wanted to desperately protect the child's bones, but was powerless to do so. My formless soul passed through Declan's body, and I could only let out a heartbreaking cry. But just as he was about to uncover the black cloth, Serafina stopped Declan. "Declan, I know Alara has a grudge against me, but she's using scary bone toys to mess with us now. She knows I'm timid. I'm afraid I'll have nightmares tonight." Declan stopped and hugged the Serafina who was about to fall, shouted into the air. "Alara, I know you are hiding nearby watching us now. While there is still room for recovery, I'll give you a chance. Let you safely give birth to the child at the Declan's house. If you still don't come out now, I will send people to tie up your whole family and feed them to the dogs." The surroundings were silent, with no response. Seeing that I hadn't appeared, Declan looked at the fragile woman in his arms, wanting to leave and punish Alara properly later. A gust of wind blew, and my charred face under the black cloth made eye contact with Declan. He fell to the ground in terror. Serafina screamed and fainted, breaking my bones in half as she fell. He ordered people to throw the bones from the tree into a bag, threatening to throw them in the trash, fearing that Serafina would be frightened again when she woke up. If you're going to act, at least make it look realistic. How can a person be burned so completely? It's obvious that you used a fake skeleton, burned it, and threw it here to pretend. Are you all trash? Serafina is already fainted, but you're still standing here listening to Alara. Did I give you your salary for nothing? Today, she dares to joke with the child's life and her own life. In the future, she will dare to occupy the Declan's house. When I see her, I will give her a good punishment and change her temper. The special assistant in the dark could no longer listen, and took out a blue-black bracelet and handed it to Declan. He knew the origin of this bracelet. It was the bracelet he had saved up to buy for Alara in his first year of starting a business. Alara had always treasured it and wore it every day. The style was very simple and easily out of date. He had once promised to buy another bracelet to replace it on her birthday. But Declan now realized that it had been a long time since he had given Alara a gift. The special assistant threw the bracelet at Declan and said indignantly, "All these years, you have turned a blind eye to Madame's love for you. Now for a woman, you have destroyed her life. Just now, you crushed the body of your child with your own hands. The remains of your wife are in front of you, but you still don't believe it. Now that this bracelet appears, you should understand. Madame has accompanied you step by step to this day. She has enough love for you. Even Madame's body has left her with illnesses due to drinking and staying up late during the startup period, requiring her to take large amounts of medicine every day. Have you forgotten everything? It was Madame who insisted on breaking off relations with her by family parents in order to marry you, just to stabilize your company, which was about to go bankrupt. But what has Madame's love brought her in return? It's you for the sake of a woman, who are trampling on her, treating her like she's not human, preferring to believe someone else's words than Madame's thousands of words. Her love for you made you think she couldn't live without you. Now she's dead, are you satisfied? How could he easily forget after loving her for more than 10 years? During high school, I came to the city to study with my parents. My foundation was poor, my grades were difficult to keep up, and I was often bullied by classmates. In order to keep up with the pace of learning in the new school, I spent my lunchtime doing problems, which caused me to faint from low blood sugar during physical education class. It was Declan who disregarded other people's opinions, rushed forward to pick me up and take me to the infirmary. After knowing my situation, he promised to tutor me one-on-one after class. He even took the initiative to solve the problems of those who had bullied me after knowing that I was being bullied. I asked him why he was so good to me, and he said that I was very similar to someone he knew, but that person was no longer by his side. Perhaps because of the passage of time, when someone reached out and was willing to help me during the most difficult time, my feelings for him changed from goodwill to love. I seemed to understand what it felt like to like someone in the hazy years of youth. I followed him from high school and chose the same university as him, ignoring my parents' objections. On the day I became an adult, I wanted to declare my love, which had been hidden for a long time, but what I received was news of Declan's serious illness. When I asked the doctor, I learned that Declan's condition had developed to the most serious stage. Currently, only one doctor in the country could successfully save him, but the doctor was old and had retired long ago. I then learned that Declan's family had been enduring the pain to support the high surgery costs. In order to save Declan, I walked barefoot over mountains and rivers, kneeling and bowing my head at the doctor's door for 3 days and 3 nights. Just as I was about to faint, the doctor agreed to come out to see me, but he had a condition. Those who violated his rules had to endure his 3 lashes. If they could endure it, he would agree to go. Under the 3 lashes, my skin was already torn and bleeding. I stubbornly stood up, with only one thought in my mind: save Declan. Even when Declan had surgery, I climbed 3,000 steps to a temple to pray for him, and asked for a peace charm to put in front of his bed. After I recovered from my injuries, when I went to see Declan again, there was another woman by his side. Her name was the name of the girl he had told me about 3 years ago. Soon, on the day Declan was discharged from the hospital, They agreed to get married soon. Later, I learned that Declan thought Serafina had asked her mother to cure his illness, and that the amulet was the amulet that Serafina had asked for after kowtowing 3 times and bowing 9 times. In order to save Declan, I walked barefoot over mountains and rivers, kneeling and bowing my head at the doctor's door for 3 days and 3 nights. I once explained the truth to him, but he thought I was a despicable person who stole others' credit, deliberately fabricating a story to deceive him, thinking I was driven mad by unrequited love. On the night of their wedding, Declan was drugged and mistakenly identified me as Serafina, and in one shot, I became pregnant with his child. Under pressure from both sets of parents, we got married, while the woman he loved went straight abroad. Declan always believed that I had drugged him that night, driving away the woman he loved, and when the child in my womb was about to be formed, he dragged me to the hospital and had it forcibly aborted. I believe there must be a misunderstanding, and I didn't blame Declan. I hoped to win back his love with my sincerity. I accompanied him in starting his business, step by step towards success, and our estrangement slowly diminished. When I became pregnant again, and the child was about to be born into the world, a phone call dragged me to hell. Serafina was back. Only then did I realize that in Declan's world, I was just a breeding tool, and he had never given me his true heart. Everything was just a futile fantasy of mine. After hearing these words, Declan's eyes showed a bit of unresolved emotion, and he silently fiddled with a broken bracelet in his hand. Even he himself had not noticed so many details, which now, when spoken by someone else, pierced his heart with every word. Before leaving, the assistant threw down a sentence that Declan couldn't calm down from for a long time. You can send these bone fragments to be identified to see if they are indeed Madam's. I only hope that Madam won't die without a burial place, and can rest in peace if she is properly buried. Declan sent people to collect all the ashes from the scene, and then hurriedly left with Serafina. His mind was in a chaotic mess, and even his breathing was a little unsteady, his vision blurred in waves. He tried hard to shake his head to clear his mind, and didn't even notice that Serafina had woken up. Finally, the car was stopped by the traffic police for running several red lights and taken back to be punished. During this time, his hands were constantly shaking as he cooperated with the inspection, only hoping to be released as soon as possible so he could rush to the hospital. While Serafina was lying in bed for a checkup, Declan seemed to suddenly remember something and ran to ask her, "Sarah, if your mother hadn't rescued me from the hands of the Grim Reaper back then, I wouldn't be here today." From that day on, I wanted to mark the day of my rebirth as my new birthday. Do you remember the date of that day? Declan seemed anxious to confirm something, his tone urgent and eager. After hearing this, Serafina's eyes didn't dare meet Declan's directly, and her expression became increasingly unnatural. "That day I went up the mountain to pray for you and almost fainted on the road. If it hadn't been for a monk who saved me, I wouldn't have woken up until 2 days later. I don't remember which day it was." Watching Serafina lie without changing her expression, Declan tightly hugged the woman in front of him and believed her words. He believed Serafina so much that he wouldn't doubt her even if she said 1,000 words. Relying on the belief that Serafina was his savior, he never took action to verify whether what she said was true or false. It turned out that his bias was so obvious. But only Declan himself knew that his heart couldn't calm down for a long time. He urgently wanted to know if the remains just now were Alara's. He was afraid they were, so he didn't dare go to the forensic identification department first, but instead asked Serafina to stabilize his agitated heart. He didn't know why, but when he came back to his senses, he was already standing at the entrance of the forensic identification department. Before he could react, a solid punch came straight at him. Before Declan's head could right itself from the blow, he saw the identification report falling to the ground. The report clearly stated that the DNA match between the identified remains and Alara's DNA was 99%, confirming that they were Alara's remains. Declan instantly lost his strength and slid down the wall, collapsing limply on the ground, his mind blank. The forensic doctor Rowan grabbed his collar and dragged him up, his eyes unable to hide the desire to kill him. "Declan, give me back my sister. Give me back the living Alara. Are you even human? You tied a living person to a tree and burned her alive, and now she's even become a skeleton, with other parts completely charred. You knew she was pregnant and about to give birth, but because her skin was burned, the child fell directly out of her burned body, falling into the fire and dying without a doubt. Back then, when you were seriously ill, if Alara hadn't stayed on the mountain for 3 days and 3 nights, enduring 3 lashes that ordinary people could hardly bear, the divine doctor wouldn't have personally gone down the mountain to treat you. You would have died long ago. Now you repay kindness with revenge, leaving Alara without a burial place. Do you know how much pain she endured? She endured the pain of her skin burning at high temperatures, while simultaneously experiencing the excruciating pain of a severe tear during childbirth. And what about you? You were flirting and cuddling with other women at that time. I really misjudged you. I should have stopped Alara from marrying you back then. Otherwise she wouldn't have died so early. Declan muttered to himself. No. No. Alara couldn't have been burned to death. I used fake fire. How could she have died? The person opposite him looked at his delirious state and felt truly unworthy for his dead sister. He took out his phone and opened a long-sealed video. But when Declan saw the video, he realized that he had been wrong all along, and that he was extremely regretful. In the video, in the observation room, Alara's forehead was broken and red, and the blood from the wound on her back stained her white clothes red, making it look shocking. In his eyes, Alara was someone very sensitive to pain. Now she knelt on the ground without fear of pain, begging the old monk in front of her, begging him to save the person she loved. On the other side, on the operating table, he was lying there with his eyes closed after being anesthetized, and Serafina's mother was performing surgery on him. But even ordinary people could see that the doctor was making mistakes one after another, even causing the patient to bleed heavily, and looked completely helpless. It wasn't until Alara heard that the old doctor had stepped in, and the surgery was successful, that Alara relaxed her nervous emotions and fainted. Only then did Declan come back to his senses. Alara had told him many times before, but at that time he only thought it was Alara using the opportunity to steal Serafina's credit. Now it seems that he didn't investigate clearly, and a momentary misunderstanding hurt her for a lifetime. Declan knelt on the ground, and tears dripped onto the white paper, blurring the ink. I want to see Alara just once. I'll go apologize to her. It was me, it was my fault. It was all my fault. Walking into the chilling morgue, although he had prepared himself mentally, he was still shocked by the scene before him. The bare skull could no longer be seen in its former appearance. Declan touched the air with his fingers, outlining her appearance when she was alive. Alara, how could I be so stupid? Only now do I realize that everything you did for me was real. I was wrong, Ella, come back, okay? Let me make up for the mistakes I made, okay? Looking at Declan's emotional appearance in front of him, I no longer felt anything in my heart. In his heart, I was a jealous, vicious woman. What use was his affectionate appearance now? As the white cloth was pulled away, the incomplete bones in front of him, and even everything below the pelvis, had long turned to dust. There had been a life in that half section of the pelvis. Now they had turned into a handful of light ashes. And even as the child's father, he had never seen what his child looked like when they were born. He wanted to hold his beloved woman one last time. He still remembered that she said she liked the warmth in his arms the most. Before he could use any force, the fragile bones broke into several pieces, as if silently telling him that his beloved woman would never come back. The black ash stuck to his hands. He was clearly a clean person, but now he just stroked the ashes carefully, unwilling to let go. While he was reluctant to part with Alara, he also questioned her death. He clearly used fake fire. He only wanted to give Alara a small warning. How could he have made such a big mistake? Outside the door, the assistant dragged in a homeless man who was covered in injuries and ragged clothes, and the first sentence he said made Declan understand the truth. I confess, I'll say everything, please let me go. A woman asked me to set a fire in the forest and burn Mrs. Declan to death, and promised to give me $1 million. Now I don't want the money anymore, just please let me go. Declan's blood rushed to his head, and he kicked the homeless man in front of him to the ground with one foot, even kicking the man until he couldn't get up to vent his anger. It happened that Serafina came out of the ward to find Declan, but the homeless man saw her at a glance and shouted, "It's her! It's her!" Serafina realized that her matter had been exposed only when she saw the homeless man in front of her. Before she could react, Declan had people press her down. The man in front of her had scarlet eyes, looking like he was about to eat someone. Declan grabbed her chin and asked sternly, "Do you think you can still escape this time? You've lied to me for so long, even harming Alara. I definitely won't let you go this time. If it wasn't for you, Alara and I wouldn't be separated by life and death. Alara wouldn't have died." Serafina's face turned green from being pinched, and she struggled desperately, but the man opposite her didn't loosen his grip at all. "Since you love me so much, how about I ask you to repay my beloved woman with your life?" Soon, Serafina learned that this way of repaying the debt was actually to experience 1,000 times the pain that Alara had suffered. Flames blazed, and the woman's screams echoed throughout the forest. Declan knelt in front of Alara's tombstone, and only then did he feel better. Next to my tombstone was also an empty tomb, inside which were the clothes I had prepared for the children before I died. He repeatedly and heavily hit his forehead against the tombstone, and even the tombstone was stained red. "Ella, I miss you so much. Please forgive me when we meet again in the next life, okay?" After saying that, his blood rushed to his heart, and he kept vomiting large amounts of blood. Only then did I realize that there was a dagger inserted straight into the center of his chest, hitting the heart. Watching Declan's body slowly fall to the ground, I turned around and left without looking back. "No need to meet again. I'm afraid you'll taint my journey to the underworld." From then on, I could leave this noisy world with ease.